Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. We have the latest Squadron 42 monthly report, so let's get to it. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you so much for the support. It is truly appreciated, and if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. So this has to be the smallest Squadron 42 report that I have ever read. Only 7 teams of information, which is certainly a good thing, as it means that there is not a lot of work required until it is done and ready. Of which, I am sure we will hear a lot more about at CitizenCon in less than a couple of weeks. Holy moly. Anyway, starting with the AI tech team, they enabled the designers to set default schedule areas and tags on instanced NPC entities and then exported them in object containers, which makes it easier for levels with pre-placed NPCs as information is no longer required to pass through scripting. Navigation cost volume can now also be enabled and disabled through flow graph nodes and modify its initial cost at runtime. And this, I think, is referring to NPCs that are on the surface of a planet, for example. That is generally what they refer to when they talk about navigation volumes and so forth. Now, on the performance side, further improvements were made to the vision, observable, and perception components. For example, update frequency was adjusted based on AI character level of detail, so that the closer entities are more responsive. Now, this sounds like a good sort of optimization idea, giving more resources to the NPCs that are closer to you, although I don't know if that would work on the persistent universe with people being all over the place. I guess it could work if it's the same rule set. We will see. Also, the team implemented lighter AI zone handling for observables, which they say will deliver significant improvements when zone queries are made by NPCs. Now, for the AI social strike team, the narrative designers spent September working on key social scenes, and on the AI side, they polished locations and added additional life via utility behaviors. And locations that were worked on include the ship's hangar, the gym, the bridge, barracks, bathrooms, and mess halls. A lot of these kind of social elements or social behaviors, or I suppose utility behaviors in this case, can also be brought over to the PU when we have background characters just going about their business. Also, I suppose crewmen as well. If you're hiring NPC crew, giving the feeling that they're looking like they're doing something, if you haven't given them a specific job to get on with, they could just wander around looking like they're actually interacting with something. A bit like what you would see on something like Starfield. Now, for the animation team, they improved on the zero-G flow. They also adjusted weapon reloading, first selects, and how players interact with the environment to improve overall combat AI, while code was updated to fix various cover bugs. The facial team progressed through the remaining animations for the game, which is nearing completion, they say, at which point they will then transition to improving all facial animations, starting with the key cast characters. It does sound like the final round of improvements are kind of coming in now, and once they've finished with the actual physical animations, they will, as said here, move on to the facial animations. It'll be cool to see what level of quality they can get to. Now, the mocap team assisted the gameplay team with body type 2 animations and captured additional data for various gameplay story sections. Now, I'm not sure what body type 2 is referring to, but having an in-house mocap studio is definitely a good thing and will help to heavily speed up the process of any additional captures they need, rather than having to go to another studio, a third-party studio. Now, next we have the environment art team, who focused on key chapters, pushing the boundaries of art and lighting for a high-fidelity cinematic experience, it says. And I am, of course, looking forward to seeing exactly how good it looks, especially when they have global illumination and ray tracing enabled. I'm assuming this is something that will be shipping with Squadron 42, as they are heavily working on it now, and by the time Squadron's ready to release, it should be looking glorious. Now, they also looked at dynamic environmental destruction and continued to flesh out planet-side content for Chapter 7, so it sounds like the Maelstrom physical damage system might be in a place now where they can potentially start applying it to areas of Squadron, so hopefully this also means it's at a place where they can show it off at CitizenCon and we can start to see this roll out in the persistent universe. Maelstrom is one of those bucket list features that I'm really hoping is going to be presented at CitizenCon this year. Now for the gameplay story team, their priority was to support wider efforts to polish, along with using new mocap to significantly improve 2 scenes in Chapter 4. The team also looked closely at Chapter 5, restructuring a complex scene featuring 3 characters meeting with variable timing, with the team saying, "This previously looked a little disjointed depending on the timing of the meeting. However, following reorganization and new mocap, the scene is looking much better and is far more robust." Also, a number of scenes in Chapter 13 were blocked by a problem with the level, which the developers solved by submitting a setup fix, with many being submitted and resolved. And finally, for the gameplay story team, they continued making steady progress on additional scenes in Chapter 15, implementing a significant amount of performance capture data. So it sounds like they're just going through each scene, making sure it flows as good as possible, making sure that nothing feels out of place or unrealistic, and just tweaking where necessary. Kind of going through it with a fine-tooth comb, if you like. Now, moving on to the narrative team, it says, following improvements to the scanning mechanic, the team spent time fleshing out information for corpses that players will encounter during the game, and this also exposed some improvements to how scanning information is applied so it can be properly localized into other languages. So something that we will see come along eventually with the FPS scanning update, or even the Paramed tool, is the ability to scan a dead body and learn the cause of death, which was spoken about a little while back at a CitizenCon when they were planning out a series of investigation missions, being able to see the cause of death using your Paramed tool. I also assume that when it comes to FPS scanning, they would likely use a medical helmet to provide more contextual information than, say, a mining helmet or an FPS helmet. So plenty to come for FPS scanning, plenty to come for being able to determine cause of death. Anyway, additionally, the narrative team had several meetings to perform a moment-by-moment analysis of one of the more narratively intense levels to refine the dialogue, environmental storytelling, and enemy behaviors to ensure that they all work together, which they say resulted in various adjustments, including the timing of specific dialogue triggers and the location of certain props. And finally, the team also wrote several dialogue lines for automated systems that play in one of the chapters to contribute to creating the proper narrative atmosphere. Now, I would say the narrative team, especially people like Dave Haddock, probably has the most work to do now for Squadron by running through the full campaign multiple times, every scene and every interaction and every environment, just to make sure that it all feels right and shares more about the lore, but also adheres to the lore correctly as well. Plus, just make sure that each scene is as accurate as possible for the feeling and the location. Now finally, we have the VFX team, who continue to work towards their current milestones, supporting cinematics, gameplay, locations, and weapons teams with their content deliverables. Plus, they are currently working on optimizations to ensure the best experience for all players. And that is it. That is the full Squadron report. It is so short now that things are beginning to wrap up. I am overly excited to see and hear the news about Squadron 42 at CitizenCon this year. I certainly expect, if I was to guess, we would hear about an expected release date. I feel like that will be one of the announcements, and if so, that is going to be amazing. Anyway, I will go and get on with the Persistent Universe monthly report. Plenty of juicy news to be heard. But with that said, if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. Also, come and hang out over at twitch.tv/SuperMacBrother. You are all more than welcome. The link is in the description below. We will be playing some 324.2 today. I think it's still with Wave 1. It was potentially going to Wave 2 yesterday or last night, but I think there was a bit of a blocker with one of the moons, causing crashes. So I think they held off pushing it to Wave 2, but it's still Wave 1, so I will be playing that, checking out all that it has to offer. And if you have any questions about Star Citizen, by all means, come and ask them. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, it does the channel a big favour, and tick that notification bell if you'd like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you so much for all your support. Cannot do it without you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.